ruler.
Sold.
Your lands, your possessions, your very lives will gladly be given in tribute to me.
What's up, everybody? So we're gonna check out this quit making remakes video by the Critical Drinker, and let's jump into it.
You know, the older I get, the more I've come to realise how fucking lucky I was to grow up in the 1990s. It was a simpler, more optimistic, more innocent decade when movies were still awesome, Britannia was still cool, people didn't get fucking offended by everything. Lara Croft was an awesome ass-kicking adventurer with a fantastic pair of guns, instead of a miserable waste of polygons that constantly apologises for existing. It was a time when going online was a once-a-week treat that cost £10 an hour and required a trip to a special cafe, instead of an all-consuming dystopian nightmare where people spend millions of man-hours arguing with 12-year-old edgelords on the other side of the worlds. It was also the era of the Disney Renaissance, a roughly 10-year period of unbridled creativity and commercial success, when Disney's animation studios cranked out classic movies like Beauty and the Beast, The Little Mermaid, Pocahontas, The Lion King, Hercules, Mulan and Tarzan. They were fun, exciting, heartwarming adventures that dealt with timeless themes and ideas, and if you were a young kid in the mid-90s like me, then I can pretty much guarantee you knew the soundtracks to these films off by heart. Truly, it seemed like Disney could do no wrong. Oh, how times have changed. The wide-eyed kids of the 90s are now cynical 30-somethings weighed down by the responsibilities of adult life, probably with asshole kids of their own, and quietly pining for the simple, carefree days of their childhoods. Meanwhile, the once family-friendly and patriotic Disney has mutated into a horrifyingly monstrous parody of its former self, an insatiable, franchise-gobbling monster relentlessly consuming good ideas and beloved characters to churn out an endless conveyor belt of bland, mediocre sludge. And since original creative thinking is for them what innovation and risk-taking is for NASA, it was only natural that they'd inevitably turn their eyes towards the past instead of the future. And truly, what better past to pilfer than the golden age of animated movies? I mean, they certainly got off to a strong start with Beauty and the Beast, a live-action remake of the 1991 original, which basically replicated the entire movie shot for shot. Sure, you could probably argue how lazy it was to basically make the same exact film again and sell it to a whole new generation, but who the fuck cares? Disney certainly didn't, especially when it made a shit zillion dollars for them. So
isn't it weird? Now this is, if you don't believe me, you can look it up, okay? If you don't believe me, you can look it up. This is actual statistic. Why is it that out of all the Disney movies and all the Disney princesses, why is most women's favorite Disney movie Beauty and the Beast?
Why take the chance on new, unproven ideas when you can basically dust off old scripts and sell people's childhoods back to them at an inflated price? The floodgates were well and truly open, and before you knew it, we were getting bombarded with modern-day remakes of classic animated movies. The only problem is that with each new installment, they got progressively more shit. But hey, they made the company shit tons of money, so who cares? Well, all of that changed with the release of Mulan a couple of years ago, a film that went wrong in basically every way possible. For a start, it released in the middle of a global pandemic when the prospect of going to the cinema was about as appealing as a colonic irrigation using habanero chilies. Attempts to pander to the Chinese market backfired spectacularly since it fucked up most aspects of Chinese culture and history, and for rather obvious reasons, Western audiences weren't exactly thrilled by all things Chinese at that time either. As a result, the film bombed, and it wasn't the only one to attract negative attention. The first teaser trailer for the upcoming remake of The Little Mermaid has got one of the most brutal YouTube ratios since Frosk decided to publicly torpedo her own company live on air. And to be honest, it's not entirely hard to see why, because this movie basically exemplifies everything that's bad about these fucking remakes.
Go install the browser extension that allows you to see YouTube dislikes, and go to the Little Mermaid trailer, and It's way higher than that. It's way more than 1 million now. I think it's like 10 million now, which is a lot.
Fact that the actor playing a mythical sea monster has got slightly different melanin levels in her skin. Disney baited the fans with that one because they knew they could use the resulting backlash to silence any actual criticism of the movie, and they fell for it hook, line, and sinker.
It's purposeful bait.
Okay, that's enough nautical references for now. The bigger issues are more fundamental ones that you can apply to basically all of the Disney remake movies. I mean, for a start, take a look at the colour palette of this thing. Look how dark and muted and subdued everything is, and then compare it to the original animated movie. You see how much more bright and vibrant and interesting that world looks? Yeah, it's completely unrealistic that the deep ocean would look this way, but it doesn't really matter, because it's an animated movie with its own visual style, and that style allows the artist to set their own rules for how you engage with it as the audience. But the moment you bring live action into the equation, you immediately constrain yourself with the limitations of what people expect to see in the real world. That means the deep ocean is now a dark and foreboding place where Ariel is framed like some kind of terrifying monster instead of a plucky heroine longing to experience the world above. Jesus, if you swap out the soundtrack for a horror theme, the face reveal feels like it should be more like this.
Yeah.
This particular problem was especially noticeable in The Lion King, where the animators had been given the almost impossible task of anthropomorphizing, humanizing the animal characters while also keeping them looking photorealistic, and the results were take a look at the original movie. You see how expressive and compelling the performances are? Yeah, obviously real animals can't move, talk, and gesticulate anything like this, but it doesn't matter because just like the Little Mermaid movie, it's an animated film with its own rules about how these things work, so it becomes very easy to suspend your disbelief. Supposedly realistic CGI, on the other hand, doesn't have that luxury. And Jesus Christ, don't even get me started about Will Smith and Aladdin. God, I missed it.
It's like, it's crazy. It's crazy what they're doing. It's like Disney is purposely being divisive. Now, if you give them the total benefit of the doubt, and that, and say, let's say if we give them the total benefit of the doubt, at the bare minimum, it's pre-planning divisiveness, so that way they're completely excused for any bad reviews or bad critics or the movie bombing, because then they can just hide behind the racism card, right? That's giving them the ultimate benefit of the doubt, because we do know for a fact that before they casted, they didn't cast everyone to say, hey, they didn't have a casting call for everyone to come audition for Ariel. They already had it planned out that they were only going to cast a black girl, right? They already had it planned out that they were only going to cast a black girl. It's a completely different scenario, where if they had a casting call, they had a bunch of people of all races come in and audition for Ariel, and then ultimately they, for whatever reason, in a Danish story about a white ginger mermaid, they decided to go with a black girl. It wasn't that. They didn't have an open casting call for everyone. They only auditioned black girls. They already had it pre-planned that they were gonna only audition black girls. So it was a purposely pre-planned thing. It's affirmative action, rearing its head again. It's already a pre-planned thing, and then they had it all ready to go. All the narratives they wanted to go with. If anyone objects to this, they're a racist, blah blah blah. If anyone doesn't like the movie, they're a racist. If anyone thinks there's, like, that was a perfect example of how he showed it. Like, the original movie was super colorful and bright, right? This movie, it's like all dark and grim, and like it's like everything was darkly shaded and shadowy. Like, that sounded wrong, but anyway. But I'm talking about the scenery. I'm talking about the scenery. The scenery could be mistaken for a horror film. Anyways, that's giving them the benefit of the doubt. But I think their true intentions are far more nefarious. I think they are funded and they have political ties, and I think they're purposely being divisive to destabilize society on purpose, because that makes us more easy to conquer. Because while we're all divided and weary and destabilized, it makes our government's chicanery and tightening grip and all that go over easier, because everyone's, everyone's delirious like an injured animal. But anyways, let's jump into it.
Yeah, I know it's more labour intensive, and I know it can't deliver anything like the detail you get in Pixar movies, but holy shit, there's just something so much more satisfying about it. Knowing that actual artists had to draw and animate this stuff frame by frame, instead of pre-built character models running a series of programmed movements, is just so much more human and charming. Every fucking Pixar movie nowadays looks exactly like the one that came before it. They all have the same bland, generic, soulless look about them, like you're eating a meal made from the same basic ingredients, only arranged in a slightly different
Pixar
way.
was so
I mean, would
good.
it kill movie studios to release the occasional film using traditional animation for once? Another issue that's been coming up more and more with these remakes is the alteration of characters and storylines to appeal to modern audiences. It started out with little things, like Emma Watson insisting that Belle be an inventor and engineer in Beauty and the Beast, because I guess being a fun-loving, intelligent young woman desperate to get out into the wider world and escaping vicariously through the medium of books just wasn't enough for her. She had to make her into Elon fucking Musk as well. But whatever, it was just a minor change that didn't matter that much in the grand scheme of things. But what it did do was set the precedent. The problems, however, became more severe in Mulan, which basically reworked the protagonist's entire character arc to pander to the insufferable modern convention that female characters have to be fundamentally great at everything right off the bat. No inspiring lessons about the value of hard work and perseverance here. It was all about appealing to female empowerment in the laziest, most superficial way possible. Problem. Speaking of which, here's a little hint from a January 2022 interview with star Halle Bailey about the direction The Little Mermaid is going to take. I think everyone will be pleasantly surprised by some updates of the themes of the film, more so on Ariel's side of women empowerment and her taking her power back. I mean, I thought the original Ariel was pretty empowered already, considering she saves Prince Eric's life on more than one occasion, and her decisions drive the entire course of the story, but whatever. I guess because she occasionally needs help from other people, she's just not modern enough. Can't wait for Eric to be transformed into the same useless, bumbling buffoon template that Disney used for every single male character in their movies these days, and Ariel to be an unstoppable kick-ass girl boss who fixes everything all by herself.
Listen, I want to touch on more what he was said. Sorry, I was distracted in my head because I thought there was a setting wrong or something. Anyways, but I want to touch more on what he said a minute ago. It's one thing. It is one thing if you want to make that type of movie where it's just an action hero, right? But here's the thing. It is not sexist, because if you go back to the 90s or the early 2000s, we watched and enjoyed tons of movies where there was a female action hero who just kicked a lot of ass and was good at everything, and we enjoyed it, right? We enjoyed it because most of the time they were already established characters, or they were their own thing. So it was its own thing. It wasn't something being taken over or subverted. Like, for example, Rambo, John Rambo. Now, you could argue that the first movie, First Blood, had a lot of character building, and he wasn't just immediately some invincible badass. It had character building, and like blah blah. But then later on into the series, this is just an example. It may not be a good example, but it's just an example. Later on in the series, he's like just some crazy action hero, right? What I'm saying is we've had experience long before this, decades ago, the 90s, the early 2000s, female action heroes, and I don't think any of us, me included, have ever had a problem with that. I didn't have a problem with Underworld, or I enjoyed the heck out of the Underworld series. I didn't have a problem with Ultraviolet or all of those other action movies that Mila Jovovich was the action badass of, right? I think Ultraviolet was the one, and then there was another one that had what's her name as some sort, the blonde chick from, I can't remember her name. Charlize Theron. She was some sort of action hero star in like some futuristic film. Not Mad Max. I'm not talking about Mad Max. I'm talking about something else. I think it was called like Aeon Flux or something. Aeon Flux. Yeah, that was probably it. Anyways, my point is that's fine. You can have female action heroes if it's just a mindless action movie. But it's completely different when it's actual like already established characters, like, or already established universes, and there's supposed to be character development, and there's supposed to be character building and journey and overcoming and obstacles and carrying the boulder up the hill to grow and be better, right? And this part of the story is the journey of the evolution of the character, from going from just a young, inexperienced boy on a farm to a super trained Jedi badass. That journey is part of the audience enjoyment. So when you start off these female characters already super badass from the jump, and already it ruins it. And that's the best way I can explain it.
Fuck knows what it must be like to be a little boy growing up in the 2020s. The sad thing though is that actresses like Halle Bailey are going to get unfairly caught up in the crossfire here. I mean, I'm sure she's a perfectly nice person that'll do a great job with the role, but none of that really matters because all people are talking about now is the backlash against her casting. And for what? If the real objective here was to create more lead roles for diverse actors, which is absolutely a good thing, then why not come up with new stories specifically for them, instead of deliberately stirring up controversy by crowbarring them into stories that have already been told? There's an entire world of rich cultural traditions, legends and folklore from every conceivable country, race and creed just waiting for you to try out, so why keep retreading the same ground over and over again? Why keep retelling stories that have already been told far better by previous generations?
That's why.
Oh yeah, of course.
Easy.
And I guess that's what this really comes down to. A quick, easy and reliable way of making money that requires minimal investment of risk or creative energy. It's the same reason that Lucasfilm keeps digging at the hollowed out core of Star Wars, why Paramount subjects us to endless Star Trek prequels, why Amazon are trying to launch their very own Game of Thrones using Tolkien's legacy as $1 billion canvas to finger paint on. And it all just feels so hollow and meaningless. Like these stories were generated by some AI in a lab somewhere in order to generate the highest return possible on investments. I mean, I'm under no illusions that big movie studios were ever particularly invested in artistic expression,
they put into
shit,
the AI,
there was at least a
like,
pretense of trying to tell a worthwhile story along the way. The movies of the Disney Renaissance are so fondly remembered now because they struck the perfect balance between timeless ideas, likeable characters, contemporary humor, creative talent, and vibrant, colourful animation. They sold themselves on their own merits instead of resorting to member berries or cheap manufactured controversy to drum up interest. interest, and as a result, they had to be really fucking good in order to work. And that's the problem. What we're producing now isn't. It's like last night's stale dinner quickly reheated in a microwave and plonked on your plate. But drinker, you magnanimous maestro of media mastication, I hear you say, why worry about this stuff when the original movies are always going to exist? No matter how bad things get now, we can always fire up the classic originals and make sure that the next generation gets to enjoy the kind of timeless entertainment we did as kids. Oh, you sweet summer child, you. The problem is that fewer and fewer people bother to invest in physical media these days because I guess the effort of heaving their fat, sweaty arses off the couch and shoving a disc into a
fewer and fewer people buy hard copies, right? So that, combined with the constant editing and changes made to the digital versions, eventually the only people who have the original film unedited and untouched, or the people that have the DVDs and the DVDs, Blu-rays, blah blah blah. But even the Blu-rays have already changed so much that, anyways, he'll say it.
In their busy lives. Instead, they resort to doing what pretty much everyone else does these days and download their movies from a streaming service. But the big problem with digital media is that you don't really own the thing that you're watching. All you've got is a license to download the source file, and if that source file should ever be removed or altered, well, then you're shit out of luck. We've already seen the little edits and tweaks that companies have started making to older movies that are now considered problematic. How long do you really think it's going to be before it starts happening to newer stuff? Movies that contain scenes or depictions or story beats that someone somewhere in some miserable corner of Twitter finds offensive. Characters that don't quite align with the rules of modern writing. Storylines that go against the message. The fact is, the past is no longer sacred and it definitely isn't safe. Because there are fewer and fewer people who care about preserving it, it's more vulnerable than ever to the insidious, grasping manipulations of the present. Little by little, scene by scene, movie by movie, the stories that once captivated and inspired us are being quietly removed and supplanted by cheap, cynical, soulless reproductions. And if we're not careful, if we don't push back against this shit while there's still time, then we may just find ourselves in a world where there's nothing left to protect. Anyway, that's all I've got for today. Go away now.
If you were wondering why I was smiling and snickering a second ago, it's because every time Genie kept popping up, every time he kept showing Genie, I know that was the Robin Williams Genie, but every single time I was seeing Genie, I was picturing Will Smith's Genie and remembering the slap. And I'm like, what a bitch. What a bitch the new Genie is. Because I kept seeing Will Smith, bitch. Anyways, alright. Appreciate you guys for watching this video. And please like the video. It helps with the algorithm. I hate begging for this, but it helps me, and I got to, I gotta do it. It's part of it. And please follow me on Twitch. I need more follows over there. And I will catch you in the next video. Peace out, guys.